Hello, friends. We wanted to share some thoughts today about the face that we give Divine Mother. I think growing up, not in a Christian household, but that being the main influence in my life, I feel like
Spiritually.
spiritually,
Okay.
yes. I feel like because it was the dominant religion.
Sure. That's what you were used to with people around you. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I feel like there was kind of a default um, face that was put on God, on the divine. And that's who you're stuck with.
Hmm.
And I feel like later on, and I don't know this really well, but I feel like learning a little teeny bit about Catholicism, they have a couple different faces that they put on God. I mean, well, the Lutherans talk about God and Jesus
And the Holy Spirit.
and the Holy Spirit, but the Catholics, they have uh, Mother Mary, right? Or
I don't know a whole lot
no?
about
Okay,
Catholicism, but I know, that Mary is important, and I think, to a degree some of the saints are important.
right.
Not that they are in the same category as, you
The
know.
ultimate divine.
Yeah, but maybe more expansive than, in the Lutheran church that I grew up in, we didn't really talk about saints a whole lot. Sometimes we would talk about the apostles
Hmm.
and the work that they did, but yeah, I think some of the different Christianities have different figures that
I think you can even correct us if we're wrong. I think you can pray to saints, right?
I do not know.
But there's definitely these different aspects that you can kind of connect with in some way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, much stronger in Hinduism, where there's all these different
Yeah,
faces that the divine is given. And you can choose one or a few, or maybe out throughout your life, that's going to shift.
yeah, that's definitely more than just a single. When I was really little, God was the guy with the white beard in the
Mm.
chair up in the clouds. When I was really little. Uh,
I wonder where that comes from. I don't feel like that's taught in the church, is it?
I don't
It's
know.
sort of
I
a
mean,
popular culture thing, or
when I grew up, we didn't go to church a lot when I was
oh, that's
really
right.
young. And so, I remember church with really bad memories because it was a super old church and it was very hot. And I didn't understand a thing about the service or anything. So it was only until I got a little bit, wasn't until I got a little bit older that I went to a kind of a more modern Lutheran church. But yeah, so when I was little, I do not know why God was that guy.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. But when we get that image, I don't think it's often communicated to us. There could be different.
No, I don't think so either. I think from my limited Christianity experience, there could be you could construe that if you have other faces of God, that's sort of idolatry, if you will. I mean, it
Mm.
depends.
Hmm.
So perhaps if you separate God into multifacets, then somehow you are not, because
Yeah,
in the Old Testament it was always the worship of all the different idols, and probably that was just maybe like Hinduism, different deities that were sort of, we don't know, I don't know.
yeah.
So maybe that's one of the reasons. And so because the Holy Spirit is an aspect of God and Jesus is a very close aspect of God, just incarnated in a fleshly form, maybe those are or were more acceptable.
Mm. Versions.
Yeah. So, but then
Yeah.
what if, I'm trying to think, what if I had grown up thinking that, yeah, that the divine could have these different faces, and especially in the first church that I went to when I was really little, it would have been very interesting because I have kind of a strong nature. I would have loved to see more of a feminine aspect.
Mm.
I really longed to connect with someone more like me, and you take some of the really amazing series, Lord of the Rings, or and you're like, Star Wars, I want I want there to be, at least those have, at least a couple strong female characters. Just waiting for, where's the girl? um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and so, and of course I understand, a lot of that has to do just with history, but I think it's an interesting concept to explore that the divine, for me, divine mother, can be a feminine figure. And within that could be certain aspects of that. She could be very nurturing and very loving. She could be very protective. She could be very empowering. And just within that, she can have different aspects. And that's really nice to, for me to picture a different element than some of what I grew up with.
Yes.
And sometimes I have to still remind myself Divine Mother isn't just waiting for me, to truly trust her and then she's going to drop it, here, you got to prove yourself. And it's the story of Job or something,
Yeah.
I think that's not a fair way to look at it. But because I grew up with some of that more strict
Yeah.
religion, there's that idea that was really ingrained. This is God's face. This is how God is. So I think for me, it's very freeing to not only think of Divine Mother, but also different aspects of her. And then, as we were kind of talking about, you can even take that a step further.
Yeah. Yeah. But before we go there, it's striking me as you're talking about this that that old man with the beard, it almost comes out of a caricature, a cartoon version, a popular culture version. Because again, I don't think the church is necessarily portraying that, though there may be some pictures in some churches or something. But it's we almost do a disservice to the divine when we put that limitation on whatever our concept of God is. We're saying you're stuck like this.
Yeah.
In my little teeny human version of what you are.
We're going to take all of this and we're going to go,
Yeah.
I know what you are and what you can be. Yeah, limited is a really good word. We limit the experience we get to have with the divine when we put parameters of any kind. So that's important to remember throughout this message. Any kind of parameters, eventually, if we solidify those, will in fact kind of block us from the full experience of divinity.
Yeah, I mean that's the crux of it, I think, is that limitation isn't just something we're putting out, but it's something that dictates the kind of relationship we're going to have. Mm-hmm. And I think any mystical path that goes beyond just that kind of caricature view is going to recognize that the divine is ineffable, that our little concepts cannot contain the divine. And that's when it starts to make sense to us that, we can talk about Divine Mother here and we can give her a certain face and characteristics that works for us. You might say, well, I really want, a very protective kind of mother figure right now. Mm-hmm. Or I want more of a Mother Earth type of, bounty, abundance type figure. Or maybe I don't want to think of Divine Mother as female right now. Maybe I want to think of Divine Mother as one of the male Hindu deities that, or Ganesh, let's say, who that remover of obstacles because I'm facing these challenges. And so when we do this, when we put these different faces, we're recognizing that no one conceptualization will capture or is capable of encapsulating the true divine. So maybe the best we can do is to give these different faces and say, wow, it's okay for me to say, today you're the playful buddy Divine Mother, and tomorrow you're going to give me that confidence and that power because I'm going in to have this meeting and I'm really worried about it and I need to have something there with me that's going to give me that confidence that I don't personally have. But then you were saying we can go further.
Well, okay, just a little addendum to that, which is that I know also, and this is kind of a flip side, which should just go without saying, but I'm going to say it, um, is that I know there have been periods in my life where I wanted something stable, though.
Mm,
And so
mm-hmm.
also the ability to say, this is my feeling of Divine Mother right now, and I'm going to keep that for a while because I want this feeling of something that remains the same. So that's also, of course,
I think
an option.
what the overall message there is that Divine Mother, God, the divine, whatever you want to say, is is not insecure, is not going to be insulted if you imagine him, her, it in a certain way. You can choose whatever you like, whatever works for you, for the duration that works for you. The thing that's going to work best to help you have a little bit deeper of a relationship today, a little bit deeper relationship tomorrow. And that freedom, that can be pretty liberating, I think.
Yeah. And then going a little bit further than that and beginning, and we've talked about this before, starting to see Divine Mother in people or other beings, even objects around you, which sounds weird to say objects because then it's sort of like, okay, I'm objectifying God or something, anthropomorphizing all of these things. But in a way, then it allows us to, for me, I know nature is really a close source of feeling what you can't explain with words.
Mm.
You get to just experience, and you get to experience yourself within all of that without having to think about what that means or how it works. And so I love seeing nature and then various parts of nature as sort of Divine Mother, but not even as a solid uh, individual thought, like, okay, Divine Mother, you are this oak tree. Sort of, wow, you're taking in the light on the branches with the dew and the smell of the rain. And it's just, you're filled, with Divine Mother in that moment. And so she can become all those things, but also the whole experience.
This is the blurring of boundaries. The boundaries, as you said very well, they limit the the relationship that we can have with the divine, really with anything. When we can see the thing that we're having a relationship with as it is, use the example of a person, right? If I can see them outside of my lenses, outside of my box, just as they're manifesting, then I don't get stuck into the ruts of you're not behaving the way I want you to, and then I'm going to just lose myself into my own mental, I'm mad at you and upset with you because you said this and this. I can just see you as you are, as your being. In the same way we look up at the clouds, can't really give you the view right here, but clouds passing by the windows and all their shapes, and every single shape up there is correct. Every shape up there is beautiful in its own way, is enchanting. And if I did what I did with people around me, and I had a certain idea of what every cloud could look like, then my experience of looking up at the cloud would be mostly internal frustration. Uh, you're that cloud, and that cloud is really not doing it. But that one is definitely messing it up. And that one, I don't even get it right. You see where my mind is. It's not actually seeing the cloud. It's not going into a depth of engagement with it. It's just stuck in my own
Well, and we
judgment.
laugh at that example, but when it comes down to people around us, when it comes down to circumstances, but since we're talking about faces of Divine Mother, I'll just say with people, and to a degree, probably our pets and other animals, that's very, very true.
Mm.
And especially also ourselves. We have put a limiting face on other people, other creatures, ourselves. And then with that limited viewpoint, we limit what we get to experience, the depth that we get to experience with what we're capable of, with what other people may be as a whole. And I think sometimes as we get more involved in the practice of seeing Divine Mother and feeling the connection with her as different things, we also then have more openness for the other people, creatures, even experiences in our life, because they are also sort of Divine Mother, you know. And I'm talking from a kind of almost an ego perspective here of, you know, because I could get into a really deeper spiritual place where, you know, we start to get where words don't work. But even from that place of, okay, I'm Rebecca, if I'm practicing these different faces of Divine Mother and I'm having a connection with her, for me at least, I begin to not have that kind of control factor or even the desire for a specific outcome from a person or an experience, but I begin to have a little bit more of that relationship that I'm having with Divine Mother, where I'm allowing her to be different things and she's allowing me to be and feel different ways. And then it creates interesting, I don't know what you want to call them, results, symptoms, outcomes in your relationships with other people and also yourself, where you don't have such a strong, the cloud has to look like that. Kenton, you need to be like that because that's how I know you. You know, you switch and you have, wow, okay, Kenton, wow, and me, and it begins to come to a place where you don't have a lot of words. I'm starting to not feel like it's there. Do you get it?
Oh.
What else?
Think anything else?
No.
Share back with us if this makes sense or feels right or feels wrong. Or we love to hear from you, whatever your experience is of these talks. But we hope that they help to create some insight and some exploration and some curiosity.
Yeah, and if you get a chance, just try playing around a little bit with different manifestations or connections with what you consider to be the divine, and just notice. I like to think of us all as sort of not necessarily investigators, but we are, you know, we're getting out there and looking at things and going, it's kind of like we're guinea pigs.
Yeah.
In a good way. In a good way.
Thank you for joining us today. And we'll look forward to talking with you in the comments.